It's time for the show that brings the magic right to your speakers. Ears up!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ears Up podcast. And man, I'm jazzed. I'm excited today, Eric. Number one, because I didn't die choking on my own saliva before the show. That was good.
That's another one to add to the list.
Yeah. I'm alive. I'm breathing still, but barely, much to probably a lot of people's chagrin, but I'm doing it. But we have a special guest on the show tonight, Eric. We have Aaron Goldberg. He is an author, and he wrote the book that I was speaking of a couple months ago, Buying Disney's World. And but he's also written a ton of other books, which I haven't read, but they look awesome, and I can't wait to dig into them. So we're going to chat with Aaron about Buying Disney's World, talk about the process that Walt sort of went through, or, I mean, sort of didn't really. Seemed kind of hands-off, but that's, that's Walt. Just kind of wrap about that. Taryn's going to join us here in a little bit, of course, after, her motherly duties are done, which is, I was hanging out with my friends online the other day, and they're like, how do you get out of doing bedtime with Alice? And I go, well, I don't know. My wife's just awesome. Like, they're like, man, we get told all the time, like, I don't care. I go, Alice really likes Taryn to put her to bed. She doesn't really like me to do it. She likes mommy. She likes mommy singing songs. She doesn't like the songs I sing. Which is a lot of death metal, and they're like, yeah, we just get told, I don't care, do it. Like, I don't know.
That's a week all around, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah. Like, I
guess you're just lucky. I mean, I'm not quite sure. I usually try to put the dogs to bed, but they don't really care either.
No,
and neither they don't respond to either of us, so it doesn't matter at all.
They're autonomous beings.
Right.
They're just waiting, man. Anyway, Aaron, let's get to you, man. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. I reached out to you on your website, and to be honest with you, I thought I was just going to go into the ether, and just be absorbed by the spam filter or whatever. But you responded really quickly, which made me feel good. And you said that you were familiar with the show. You heard about it watching or listening to Spectral Radio.
Yes.
And you still came on.
100%.
So I appreciate that.
It motivated me even more.
Good old Jeremy over there at Spectre. Are you friends with Jeremy? Do you know Jeremy, or are you just listening?
We follow each other on social media.
Okay.
But I stream it often just because it's good background.
Yeah, it's great background. Yeah. That kid puts so much heart and soul into that. I mean, you talk about passion projects. I mean, obviously writing books is a very passionate project. It's very laborious, but that kid just goes and he does full programming specials and does all the research. Like, I love that. But
I mean, and there are other Disney things to stream, but I always go to his. It's just like spot on because he also does a lot of the parks abroad, and I like that.
Yeah. And it's very polished and very broad at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me ask you the basic question here. How did you get involved loving Disney World so much? I mean, your books are, you have one Disneyland, you have one on Meet the Disney Brothers, The Wonders of Walt Disney World. So you're sort of Disney World focused. How did that come about?
So I'm an East Coast guy, but it all basically started with Walt. That's sort of where my interest, really lies and resonates. But I guess Walt Disney World is the easy default because that's where, I would always go, where I grew up going and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think the whole fascination and what led me to researching and reading and writing about Walt about Disney is Walt. How do you not walk into Disneyland or Walt Disney World and not like just sort of like distill it down and be like, wow, this I hate to say one man's dream, but it came from one. This is I went to Marceline and I was on the family farm, and it's like how do we get from here to there and to present day? It's crazy.
It is incredible. Yeah.
Because there you go.
Am I a robot or are you a robot, Eric? Which one of us is running the algorithm today?
It's just, it's and to create things that just so many things didn't exist before. Like
true, yeah. And you sound a lot like me, where the history of Disneyland is how we got started in doing this podcast. Is walking into Disneyland as an adult for the first time, and you go, wow, and you just get so engrossed in the history. Like, how did this come about?
Right.
What was the process, and how does it work? How do you make all of this work so flawlessly?
Right.
And in Disney World, that story, like you get into in the book, is phenomenal. And it is, you know, I don't want to say it's like a spy thriller, but it kind of is in a certain way. There's twists and turns that you don't expect. And I said this when I was first talking about your book, Taryn, you're on, by the way. Hi.
Oh, I was just waiting.
Oh, that's
for
okay.
a pause.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right, man. Just throw you in the fire. Why not? When I first got the book, I was like, you know, I'll be honest with everybody. I didn't think that this would be very exciting because it's about real estate essentially. And then I got into it and I can't put it down because it's not because what you did with the book, and I was telling you a little bit before we started, what you did with it isn't just like tell a story about things that happened. You gave a lot of context to why they were happening, and you gave a lot of background into the people who were doing the happenings, right? If that makes sense. You got a lot of like full, not just quotes, you know, a lot of books will take, here's a quote or here's a little paragraph from someone or whatever. You have full like transcripts of meetings, and you go through whole speeches and you give the whole thing like 5, 6, 8 paragraphs about Walt talking about Epcot in his own words, the whole thing. It's just here it is. Yeah. And it changed a lot of what I thought the book was about. Because it's not just about this is a land deal book. It's much more than that. It's about it's a journey that these people went on. And I mean this could be a movie. The way you know what I mean? Like a Coen Brothers movie.
Write it that way. I deliberately wrote it with in mind of the far-fetched million to one shot of this actually could be a movie.
It could. Absolutely.
But it could be. I mean I'm biased obviously, but it was a hard book to write in the sense that the subject matter and the vast amount of notes that I was able to pour through, I mean, it's boring. Some of it's boring. Some of it's not boring, but how do you tell a cohesive story? Like, where do you start? Like, that was my biggest thing. Like, I sat on these notes. So I had the notes from Robert Foster, who was the attorney who worked for Disney, who went and basically started collecting and putting the land together. Mm-hmm. I had his notes. He donated his notes to the University of Central Florida's archives. I sat on these notes forever. And I think probably 2014, 2015, 2016, somewhere. I mean, we're talking like that far back. And I always wanted to write it, but it seemed so daunting. Like, I didn't know where to begin. How do I tell the story? I don't want to include too much Disneyland, but yet you have to include Disneyland. I don't want to retell certain things because I feel like that's a way to lose somebody's, interest and attention. And then COVID hit, and I was just like, all right, we're all locked down, we're all home. I'm going to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
basically how it motivated me to, I'm just going to do it now. That's it.
Awesome. Yeah. So how do you distill those notes? How did you do that to find a starting point? What do you do?
I basically created the starting point myself. Like I knew I basically, the notes were the middle of the book. The notes were the beef of the book.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in my head, it's like, I have to create the beginning and I have to create the end. And where do you draw the line for the end? That's a tough one. So I just left it at basically, opening day, the month of October in 71. And then I was like, well, how do you make this all start? I mean, so I wanted to include that actually, the Disney family has roots in Central Florida, an hour north of Walt Disney World. So like, that's a prime, that's where we're starting. That's where we're taking the story. And then I just started to cobble things together and try to make it cohesive. And then you pull a little bit here, and then you have to do some research and, research on other folks and make it, sort of make everything seem like it works. And apparently it did.
Yeah. I love how it starts. It says by 1966, the world's population came in at 3.395 billion. The United States is made up of 196.6 million of that total. Here are a few other numbers for you from 1966. 240 million people saw a Disney movie that year.
Wow.
Just been crazy to me.
Wow.
100 million people a week watched a Disney television show. 80 million people read a Disney book. 50 million listened to a Disney record. 150 million read a Disney comic strip, and 7 million visited Disneyland. That drew me in.
So that's one of those, without sounding like a jackass, that's one of the, like, this book, like, had I not put together previous books and had enormous amounts of material and enormous amounts of quotes, and like over the years I would buy like packets like that would come up on auction from the studio. Like I bought like a new hire packet basically from like the 1960s.
Wow.
And a couple hundred pages, and within these documents are tons of facts, tons of quotes, tons of information. So it's like, okay, now I got to go back into all this. I mean, I literally have Rubbermaid tubs filled with paperwork.
Wow.
And I would just go back and I sat. So to me, like the hardest thing is starting a chapter and ending a chapter. So how do we start this? How big is Disney? I mean, how monumental was it at the time? So I'm going to look through and I find some stuff, and, like those statistics are crazy.
It is kind of like putting the Beatles into context for Gen Z right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you don't really know. You go to the park, you go, oh, okay, cool. There's an old guy who smoked a lot who made this, and that's fun. Great.
Right.
But, how do I get more popcorn? I'm, refilling my popcorn. But back in the day, this was, I don't even know an analogy for it. It was like the Beatles, I guess. Walt was that kind of visionary, but instead of working with music, he worked with art.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
it's not art, but
if you were, 30 years old in the 60s, what are you now? Like, to try, like, as you just said, to try and explain
you're
this
80
to
something.
the generation coming up. It's like, TV, well, no internet, right? I mean,
Right.
TV was 3 channels plus whatever you get locally. So most people are watching TV, they're watching Disney.
Yeah.
Or in some capacity.
Yeah,
Or-
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
fascinates me about the book is that it's also not a lot of like what I'll call Walt fluff, where you get a lot of people who write about Walt like he is just the second coming and he's a genius and he was not faulted and he knew exactly what was going on at all times. And, he's a human. We have facets, right? And you take some of those and you humanize Walt in a way that he's still revered and still knew what to do and still was very much involved in the planning. I mean, you go from, we'll dig into it a little bit, talking about the group of people that he got together to buy the land. And then, he comes back and they go, hey, we need to figure out how to manage all this land. We have Reedy Creek. We go, whatever. You have to then sell it to Walt. Well, it turns out Walt had already thought about that and made a whole friggin' video on it.
Right.
So he was very sort of hands off when he needed to be, because I think his ethos was very much that of, I'm going to pay people to do the thing that they can do better than I can. And then I'll do what I do is plan and make stuff, like make a film. And then it all comes together in the end. And I like that, where I think some other people might have taken that and gone, well, Walt knew all the way from the very beginning to the very end, and it was all planned out and went exactly according to plan. And it didn't, but it doesn't mean that he was at fault or whatever. It's just it's a giant land deal.
And everything is so monumental. Like, so even just think about what was going on at the time for him. I don't even say personally, but like professionally. So, we have New York, we have the World's Fair, we have Mary Poppins, we have colossal things going on. We still have Disneyland. So there were, and I think basically what you allude to, or what you're saying is, I 100% agree. So he, in many ways he was hands off. However, he knew what he wanted, and he knew if something wasn't right, he was, so, Robert Foster at one point pitching land near Daytona by the water, the Tomoka track, and it had everything he wanted. And Walt shut it down immediately. I'm not competing with the water. I don't want that land. You're way off. We need to come back. You got to come back down towards I-4 and 90. He knew. So, and he trusted everything. I think one of the things that he, was really good at or more than really good, but really was exceptional at, was he had the idea, found the talent, motivated the talent went after it, did what he wanted to do, and he just sort of oversaw and put everything together. I think that's, we see that. I mean, you go back to Mickey Mouse, you can go back to the Nine Old Men, you can go back to, the visionary, and even just putting part of the books together. Like I hated to speak for him. I always do. I never want to speak for him. So and sometimes I force in quotes because I want you to hear it from him, and I can pull quotes and get quotes that sort of tell you that he was not happy with Disneyland when it opened. Let's say 3 years post it opening, and what pops up around. So I'm not going to tell you that because everybody's already told you that. But let's hear it from him.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't really.
I could give you like 8 quotes, which is I think if something like I gave 6 or 8 quotes and just said, I don't have to tell you that he wasn't happy with it. Here, this is what he says about sequels, what he says about Disneyland, what he says about giving up power and control. And
yeah. So here's this quote on page 12, which I highlighted. It says, one of the things. Actually, you say an entire cottage industry popped up outside of Disneyland, and Walt disliked every iota of it. And this is from Walt. One of the things I've learned from Disneyland is to control the environment. Without that, we get blamed for the things that someone else does. When they come here, they're coming because of integrity that we've established over the years, and they drive for hundreds of miles, and the little hotels on the fringe jump their rates 3 times. I've seen it happen, and I just can't take it because, it reflects on us. I just feel a responsibility to the public when I go into this thing that we must control that. And when they come into this so-called world, that we will take the blame for what goes on. He knew it.
Yep.
And I think right under there, you say a second-rate Las Vegas, as he often call it.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like he really enjoyed the outskirts of his little world that he built.
No.
Yeah.
Disneyland was his muse. Not to jump books, but not to plug another book, but
please do. Yeah.
So I released a book called Presenting Disneyland a couple months ago. I think I released in July.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
And the last page of the book has a quote from Walt so that book's basically, I came across about 130 some odd slides from Disneyland's opening day. Never seen, never published. It was a Disney studio employee who was invited to opening day. These slides were shot in color. Disney didn't even take the photos in color. I acquired them from the family, had them restored, had them digitized, and I put them out in a book, a coffee table book, and I matched. Basically I didn't want to tell the Disneyland story, and I didn't want to take away from the photos. So basically tried to match the photos with content from around opening time. The last photo of the book is a picture of the exit from opening day. And the quote that I include from Walt says, somebody asks him, do you think you could replicate this somewhere else? Would you replicate this somewhere else? I'm going to butcher it, but this is basically just
okay.
And he says, the only place this would ever work is Florida. So that in 55. So there was always, I think the wheels were always turning. I think a lot of the things it wasn't necessarily about, I think it's like almost like the thrill of the chase. Like he'd like to do these projects. So this project is done. Now what's next?
It's the journey.
I love the part.
Yeah.
But it's like, I need something more now. I need something else. I did this. Nobody thought I could do it. And I did it. And now I think I could actually do it better.
He was a shark, man. He had to keep swimming. Got to go. Keep going. Keep going until he couldn't. Yep. And even then he was pissed. I'm doing some research for a show on our Patreon about his time in the hospital. It's actually looking at where the conspiracy theory of Walt's frozen body came from and all that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I'm reading about his stay in the hospital for like 2 weeks after surgery, and he's like, I need to get out of here. And I think going to the hospital was convenient for him because it was right across the street, but I think it was also worse for him because it was right across the street.
Oh, yeah.
He could see his studio going, I need to be there. I need to get going. I need to get back at it. You can't
That's
sit
heart-wrenching.
still.
Yeah, I would psychologically would be terrible for me.
Yeah.
For
Because
sure.
how does he not want to get up and go run across the street?
I'm
Well,
sure he did.
And especially because, like, let's just be honest, he is quite a controlling guy. He wants to control everything, every aspect of what he has his hands in. And so to be across the street, that had to be very hard.
Yeah, it's like a tease.
Yeah.
In your book, you mentioned a couple little things about what came after Disneyland, but before Disney World. One of them was mentioned really briefly. We almost had a park in West Palm Beach.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to with the, I don't want to compete with the land?
Yeah.
Or with the water? Sorry.
So that was, that I think that land is now the PGA Tour, like the Professional Golf Association. That's their land. But it would have been it was sort of, Walt didn't own the land. It was pitched to him. They sort of wanted a city of the future. They wanted him to get involved. There would have been a park, a theme park. But again, it went back to control. Wouldn't have had control the way he wanted. Too many other parties were involved. I think NBC was one of the folks. There was his name totally escapes me. There's another, bigwig money person. And I said that, as you read about in the notes about this, the whole basically Roy's takeaway from that, he went down to see it. His takeaway from it was he was really impressed that the limousine he was riding in through the land, through the undeveloped land had air suspension. That was his. So that tells you what they really thought about the project, because he was like, "Oh, this limo had air suspension.
This limo's great."
Yeah,
I love this.
So that's
so much.
sort of all you needed to know about that one.
I appreciate one of my local attempts here, the Denver Celebrity Sports Center.
Yes,
that's something that I didn't hear about until I moved out here, and I happened across it in something about extinct Denver, and then to see it in your book and see so much more detail, like to imagine that bowling was so huge that they built an 80-lane bowling alley.
Right. I was in Walt Disney World maybe 3 months ago, and someone had a T-shirt on for it. And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! That's a hardcore. That's a fan."
Yeah, man, I love esoteric shirts that nobody buys except me.
You really do.
I really do.
That's truth.
Let's talk a little bit about the CIA operative who was sort of in charge of getting the team together. I'd always heard that, well, Walt had connections with the government or whatever, but it wasn't really like that, right? It was sort of, how did they know each other?
So Roy calls their attorneys in New York City and says, we want to do it. We're going to do a project in Florida. We need somebody on the ground. We also need them to keep their mouth shut. Who can you sort of guide us to? The founder of that law firm was basically the founder of the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA. Okay. Wild Bill Donovan was his name.
Donovan.
So
nice. It doesn't sound like a real name, by the way.
Right? Yeah. So that's the referral that gets them to Florida. Wild Bill Donovan who worked under him was Paul Hellowell, and Paul was also a OSS agent, eventual CIA agent, and basically ran the CIA throughout Asia. Had shill like insurance companies and banks that, if you dig further into Paul, fascinating guy. They would run guns, they would run money, drugs through his stuff through around the world.
Yeah, you mentioned here that colleagues from those days recall that Mr. Hellwell, then a colonel, regularly used to buy information with 5-pound shipments of opium.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it's such a shocking statement, because it's like, do you think Walt knew the extent of what was going on, or he just like,
no,
he can be quiet, he's good to go?
So it's interesting. So Paul Hellowell's daughter read the book. No idea.
Really?
I had no idea. I got an email from her. I was a little nervous.
Sure.
I mean, all that stuff is factual. I mean, I did my due diligence, and it's salacious, and I don't really want to sell something on being salacious, but you have to include it. How do you not include this?
It's a fascinating little tidbit.
So she sends me an email, and she says, "Hey, would you like to talk? Would you send you my number? Let's talk." And I was like, "Absolutely." And she's, Anne's wonderful. So I don't know how old Anne's maybe 60s, 70s.
So not a threat. She's not threatening. Okay.
No.
You can take her.
She's still in the States. We're still. So, I apologize. I said, "Anne, listen, I wasn't trying to like sully your father's name. I wasn't trying to like scandalous or put things in, but it was a fact. I mean, the facts were who he was, and without Paul Hellawell, Walt Disney World does not get done, does not come to fruition whatsoever.
Wow,
he was that important." And I said, everything I read said, that he was like the paymaster for the Bay of Pigs. So, I felt strong, and I did Freedom of Information Act, and I got some documents and blah, 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 blah. And she says, "Aaron, he was the paymaster for the Bay of Pigs. We lived in Coral Gables. I remember the night. He was it."
Wow.
Yes. So, so we're talking about like a guy in the 1960s helping Walt Disney acquire land, trying to topple Cuba.
Talk about a busy man. These two guys are too busy. That's what it was.
And they became very, very close friends. Like Walt and Paul and Roy. She said they would come over to the house. They sometimes would actually spend the night. And she, as I was a kid, I had no idea what was. I just knew Walt Disney was in my house, but they were more than business associates at that point. They became friends. They were valued each other, and it's not like you could go Google somebody and figure out hey, he's whatever he is. But obviously Walt knew enough to know that this guy got things done, and he 100% got everything done, because if it wasn't for him, it wasn't happening.
I feel like those are the people who you don't ask too many questions about anyways.
Right.
You don't want to know.
Right. And those are people like that don't exist anymore. Like these people in this day and age, they just don't exist. Like he was somebody who just is a fascinating man. I talk to Anne, maybe once or twice a week here and there. We stay in touch.
Really?
She sent me
that's cool.
some of his diary when he was in World War II, and what he would write back, and fascinating. Like someone needs to do a book and a movie on him. He's it's beyond Disney. It's really interesting stuff.
Well, you've had nothing to do now.
Yeah,
get
seriously.
started. You're already building.
She's like, "I don't know anything," because I said to her, "I'm like, hey, we have conversations." She's like, "Aaron, I had no idea. She's like, "We didn't know anything."
I mean,
I found out more. She's like, "I found out more when he passed."
That's always the way. I think that's the generation.
Yes.
The greatest generation was like World War II, or Korea was in the 70s, but still, even then, it's like. Yeah. You just don't talk about it. Don't bring it home to your family. Nobody knows about it. And then afterwards, and like my grandpa was in World War II. Yeah. And, he was, flying rescue missions or whatever. And my uncle, he's like, I don't know. He never, ever talked about it. I still don't know to this day. And you can like look him up a little bit online now and sort of see, but there's no accounts, right? There's no like, I flew in, went to this island, picked these people. Like there's no writings, there's no diary, there's no nothing like that. Yeah. It's sort of a shame in a way too.
Yeah, it's because it's a huge part of history that there's so many stories to tell.
Yeah,
and so I think one of the the interesting things about Paul Hellawell and Anne. So Anne said, "Listen, I know what is said about my dad. I Googled him. I read in the book with what you said about the opium." She's like, he loved his country. He would do anything for his country. And that's what he did. He followed orders and did what he was supposed to do. And I was like, well, can't fault him for that, right? I mean, did what he had to do.
Did what he had to do, man.
And helped create Walt Disney World.
Yeah. You take the good and you take the bad and you take them both and whatever.
There you have the facts of life.
Yeah, you have the facts of life. Thank you very much. Yeah. So there was so Hellawell, if I remember correctly, and had the group of people, and they were using shell companies to buy all this land. So they scattered out a bunch of land. Walt finally decided, like, hey, this is what I want. Go get it. And I'm obviously truncating a lot.
Yes.
because even in the middle, this is why I wanted to have you on, because all I would do, because I sat here and like marked pages of the book. I'm like, okay, I want to talk about this. This is really fascinating. You can't really see, and then I'm sitting here going like, how can I make this into a show? I can't, because I would just end up reading the whole friggin' book to everybody. Like, okay, here we go, part 1, page 149.
I got some time.
but that's how again, that's how much I really like this book, because it's not fluffy. You tell the story in a direct way, and it's really interesting. So they, Walt, said, hey, go down to Florida. The guys found 12 sites or something like that, and they put together proposals for these parcels of land that may not even be really for sale. It's just what would meet Walt's, needs. And through that, they ran into so many issues. What are some of the issues people were running into? I'm thinking specifically of like the mining rights. Talk about that for a little bit. Cause I talk about things you don't see coming.
Right. Like, and real fast, go back to what you said about the shell corporation. So Anne will say her mom would often joke around years later that she owned Walt Disney World before Walt Disney owned Walt Disney World. Because Paul would buy the property, put it in her name, then put it into a shell corporation. I mean, we're talking for like a day or, and then put it into goes in her name, then goes into shell corporation, eventually goes back, to the Disneys. But she goes, my mom used to joke all the time, she owned Walt Disney World before Walt did, because she would get the land. My dad would put the land in her name. And, my dad, she's like, my dad was an attorney, aside from being, an operative, he was an attorney, and always used to say to us, you don't sign anything, you read everything before you sign, read everything, digest it, and make sure, everything's on the up and up. And my mom used to joke with him and say, you want me to sign this? I'm not signing this. What am I signing here? But yeah, so that as soon as when you said the shell corporation, that always pops in my head when it's like, oh, my mom owned it before Walt owned it.
That's funny.
So the mineral rights, that's like another, random thing that who even knows that you could actually own the rights on the surface, and then someone else can own the rights underneath you, underneath that land, which is pretty common apparently in Florida. It's a Florida thing, because there's still things in the news that come up that people buy homes. And I saw something not too long in the past couple of years. Bought a home in Tampa, in a new development, and they wanted to, so they only owned like the land that their house is on, but everything underneath someone else owned, and they could then basically, in essence, knock the house down and drill for oil or whatever. So the land that, big tract of land, the Demtree tract that Walt, that the attorneys for Walt and Roy wanted, that was the case. So the Demtrees owned this land. They were builders. They were speculating they were going to build homes on it, and then they find out that they don't own the mineral rights, so everything underneath is not theirs. So how can you build a house and roll the dice of someone coming in who owns the mineral rights, and basically they're going to knock down your house and they're going to drill for whatever they're looking for. So the Demtrees had this land, they were now trying to sell it, and the Disneys wanted it. But it's like we can't have that. So what are we going to have? What are we going to do with this land? We don't own the mineral rights. Tufts University owns the mineral rights. Another company owns the logging rights to some of the trees, and there was a third one that owned something else. So there are three different. It's late. I can't pull out what it was. But so there's three other industries that own the land in addition to the Demtrees.
Yeah.
So the Demtrees own the top, and somebody else owns underneath. So the Disneys were, basically Paul Hellowell steps in and says, okay, well, we can get this land, but we basically have to prove why it's not valuable, because Tufts University owns it. They don't care. They're going to sit on this land forever. The Demtrees own, the land as well, the top portion. They can't do anything with that land because who can now build on it? So what do we have to do here? Like, how do we figure this out? It would be like, ordinarily, other folks had tried to figure out a way to make it happen. The Demtrees bought that land, and basically they were going to be stuck with that land unless the Disneys bought it. So Paul Hellowell says, oh, Tufts University. I had a college friend who is the head of a bank, who sits on the board of trustees for Tufts University. I'll make a call. Makes the call, goes up to Boston, basically, tells Tufts it's an asset that you're not going to use. If we don't buy it, the Demtrees could default on their mortgage, and no one's going to do anything with this land. The land's garbage. It's basically swampland. What are you going to do with it? If we buy this land, we're not saying, he wasn't saying it was Disney. We buy this land, we can do something with it, and you own so much more of the land around it. Again, we'll end up buying more. We'll take options on more. Universities need money; they don't need land. I mean, that's sort of like the gist of but it was a pretty complex methodology of how he got to that.
Yeah.
And it's a really fascinating story. I butchered the hell out of it, but that's the gist of it. So basically, Tufts signs the rights over for like $9,000.
Jeez,
some ridiculous,
steal.
I
mean, just the, I don't know, the feeling of pride. I think Hellawell. I wonder. It seems like him and Disney are sort of maybe a lot alike. In that it's the conquest. It's I want the thing. I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to get what I want, no matter what.
Absolutely. And I'm going to run it down, and that's the end of it. And we're going to make it happen.
Right.
And I don't think, if those two don't collide and intersect, it just doesn't happen, because they come up with another problem with another parcel of land. They're basically going to do. The state was going to do eminent domain on the land and take the land. The Disney's Paul Hellawell wanted that land. A state senator, Orlo Bronson. So if anybody ever drives around, Walt Disney World, there's an Orlo Bronson highway.
Right.
He owns land everywhere. He's a state senator, and he comes to find out that the land that Disney wants, the state's going to take and do eminent domain, and they're basically stealing it from him monetarily. And he's pissed because he's also in the state legislature. So these are his peers, his cohort, his group is, basically taking the land from him.
That's right. Yeah.
So Paul Hellawell says, well, who's taking this? Like what, division in the government? And, he says who it is. He goes, well, Paul Hellawell owned an insurance company, and the insurance company, had ties to this person, ties that. So he knows the head of that agency who's taking the land for the state. Kills that deal. Gets the land for the Disneys, and that's basically, I think, the land for the animal kingdom.
See, this is, I changed my mind. It's not a movie anymore. It's a limited run 5-episode series.
Yeah.
That's even better. I'll take it.
Each with an hour and about an hour episode, maybe 45 at the least.
Yeah.
But because you need to see these things. You can't, you gotta, you're right. You have to talk about that.
Yeah.
You have to put it in, and because it's I guess it's more than context. It's texture, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's.
And there was the microcosm, there's the huge macro of these huge parcels, but we didn't really touch on was, so in early 1900s, you could buy a parcel of land called Munger Farms, 5 acres, $5 a month. I think $5 down, $5 a month, 5 years, it's yours. And they parceled it out. Hundreds and hundreds of parcels. And I actually found an ad. I put the ad in the book of Munger Farms, buy the land, blah, 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 blah. And so aside from those huge tracts, there are also these small little Munger Farm tracts. And Disney basically went around, and Robert Foster went around and started to gather up these tracts, because they all would sort of connect, or there would be pieces in the middle of another track, or, parts that were in swamp. So I think one of the best stories is Robert Foster goes to Iowa. They're tracking down who owns the land, and this land was purchased at that point 40 to 50 years before. So they're trying to find who owns what. They would call. If they wouldn't call, they'd send a letter, and eventually, if they didn't get a letter, Robert Foster would actually go and knock on doors. Knocks on the door in Iowa. It's a family there. It's 2 sisters and a brother. Says he'd like to buy the land. They agree to sell it, and he says, "Can I, ask how how the family come about? There's stories of old, retirees who, before they would retire, there was a woman who, figured her husband's going to die before her. She's going to retire in Florida, so she would like skim money every month and buy a parcel of land because she was going to, retire in Florida. So
Women, you can't trust him, man.
Right, seriously. Yeah. So he's speaking to this family in Iowa, and two sisters wouldn't divulge. They just sort of ignored the question. As he's walking out, the brother comes over and he says, my sisters don't like to speak of this. They think it's ill-gotten wealth now that we're getting money for this land. But my father won the land in a high-stakes poker game in Texas. That's how we got it. And that part of that land became Fort Wilderness.
Jeez.
So,
Wow.
yeah. They're just
those little details that
you would never think of.
No, absolutely not. So next time you guys are in Fort Wilderness,
think about a high-stakes poker
play some
game.
poker or something like that.
Yeah, this lends to the miniseries though, because there's so many names, so many characters involved. You can't tell that story quick and easy. Like there's so many people to keep track of, and so many interesting personalities like Robert Foster. And, I mean, there's got to be so many extra stories that we could tease out of all of this. I love it.
I mean, you don't even need Walt in to be honest with you in this.
No, because he's going to be in it in a little bit. He's basically in it a little bit in the beginning, and then a little bit, in the middle. And
I kind of like it more that if he wasn't involved as much as you would think, right?
Yeah,
because it's really a book. It's really a story about these guys, and that's what I sort of was saying at the beginning. It's not so much about Walt and what he did. It's about the team that he got together to do it and how they pulled it off. I mean, and you're talking like clandestine operations, like you mentioned in your book, they had like secretive memos where they would like number the memos, and then you would send a memo to someone, and then they would have to send you back the original, and you have to match it up so you know that it didn't get out. Or when people had to call the offices, it would be rerouted through New York or something like that. That seems crazy to me. It seems paranoid.
Right. Didn't want to inflate the price.
And you mentioned that, and then at the end, towards the end of the middle of the end of the book or whatever, that he was sort of right to be secretive, because once it actually came out in the press, you say the prices went up from something like $165 an acre to $1,000 an acre.
Yeah, and I think what underneath a lot of this is, so we look at it now from eyes today. Mm-hmm. Especially with what's going on with DeSantis and that whole thing.
Yeah.
Roy Disney's quoted numerous times saying, I had to make a deal that wouldn't bankrupt my company. I had to do a fiscally responsible deal. So it wasn't about, I had to answer to shareholders. So can I buy land, and then can we take the hit if this doesn't work? I can't buy land at $1,000 an acre. I have to buy it much cheaper. I have shareholders. So obviously, like, they want to get the best deal. And people say, oh, they, it was like false advertising in a sense. They scammed people out of this land and blah, 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 blah. And well, there was a fiscal responsibility he felt to his shareholders, to his brother, to his family, to himself. They had so much on the line. But the reality of it was nobody was going to do anything with that land anyway.
Yeah, you mentioned at some point in the book, it was like, you said in the summer, it was like 75% underwater anyway.
Nobody was going to do anything with land anyway.
Yeah, and the idea that he scammed anybody, like normally I'd be like, yeah, because you want to stick up for the little guy, I guess. But it would be the worst business deal in probably history. If you go up to the person, you go, hey, look, I represent, Disney Studios. I want to buy this land because I want to put a park on it. How much do you want to sell it for? Of course they're going to be like, I don't know. How much do you have?
Yeah.
How many zeros can you put? Of course they're going to do that. It would be like, I don't know, man, going up to the grocer, like, how much do you want for this apple? I want to buy this apple and I have $100.
Yeah.
That turns out that's how much it is.
Of course. Rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, but there's two sides to that, because also, this leads us to Reedy Creek. Again, looking at it from eyes now, the whole thing of like Disney took advantage of the state and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not a political guy. The whole thing kind of got a headache at this point from all of it.
I bet. Especially being there. I bet.
But the reality of it is, Walt wanted this because the state couldn't do what he wanted. They didn't have the
Yeah.
money, they didn't have the resources. So rather than, have the state, I think he says Osceola County doesn't have building codes.
Yeah.
The electric, the phone company can't run wires. I want things done a certain way. We're using materials at Disneyland that folks haven't even seen. Just let me do it myself. Give me, the carte blanche power, and I want $1. Well, who wouldn't do that? Well, he's again, I don't want to burden the state. So yeah.
Yeah, but it almost through a certain lens, it almost sounds like he beamed down from his ship and said, "I'm presenting materials that you've never seen before.
Yes.
So allow me to. This is, I don't know, my boomstick kind of thing. It's very much like a technology.
Yeah.
Wow, look out! But it's true. It's absolutely
It was fiberglass. Like they were using things with fiberglass. Yeah,
I love it.
Mysterious substance. And it bamboozled the governor.
Yes. Take that fiberglass.
Yeah, and I did like that part in the book because especially now considering what's going on down there, and because it doesn't seem the way it's put in the lens of politics today is that the company took advantage of the state, like you're saying. But reading your account of it and the reasonings behind it, they needed to do this. They needed to do this because they needed to figure out how to move all this water around that would come into the area during the summer. Like you said, the building codes didn't even exist in the county, so that they were going to be needing the stuff that they were going to be doing. Yeah. So I come from the doing a lot of podcasts and craft beer, interviewing a lot of brewers and stuff like that. And this move sort of parallels a lot of during the craft beer boom, the heights and, the 10s, the 20s, or the 10s, the 15s, something like that, where breweries would go into towns that never had a brewery before. And they go, well, what do we need to do? And they go, I don't know. The county goes, I have no idea. City goes, I don't know. And so it'll take a brewery a year, 18 months to get permitting to set up. Meanwhile, they already have the space. They're paying. They have the equipment sitting in friggin' storage just to get everything going. And then it's the wastewater. Well, we didn't know you needed a bigger pipe. So now we need to try. So it is this thing where if you can take care of it yourself, that would be, what the libertarian ideal or whatever, where it's just, let me just do it.
Yeah, it's in their wheelhouse. Yeah.
Yeah.
And who's going to say no to Disney coming to your state? Why would you say no? I mean, the governor was like, whatever you need, we can do. Whatever you need, you can have. And why wouldn't he say that? Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you make the case that a couple of the guys were like, look, they've done this for other people as well. It was not an unheard of thing to have these districts, but at the size, it was brand new, but
right.
It's happened before. It wasn't anything that very special.
Listen, the villages right now, like an hour north they have their own district, very similar to Disney's, but it's still going. DeSantis hasn't messed with them. I mean, whatever, politics, but
yeah, they seem to never change. And I have in my notes talking about Henry Land, who was in the government for a second, and he supported the Reedy Creek deal and signed off on it because apparently there was no real pushback when it was passed. Then he was bad-mouthing it, saying it was the worst thing that we could have done. Well, and then it turns out he never read the thing in the first place. He never read the proposal.
No,
and it's like, yeah, and so that was my comment. Why are politics just never changing? We still go through this today. It seems wild to me.
So there's another great character in this, Claude Kirk, who was the governor, who basically signed off on everything and got it. And that guy is another guy that you should Google. Like what he did, so colorful. So again, get a random email. Eric Kirk, his son, read the book. It was just like awesome. And
I love it.
And I knew a little bit about his father, but then you dig some more, and what another colorful person who, and he's like, my dad was supposed to be vice president under Nixon. He was going to be, the running mate, but he was a bit too colorful to do things. But this was another one who, wanted what was good for the state of Florida and signed off and said, let's go, let's bring it.
And it was. I mean, he had that's
who's going to say no?
Right. Another guy you have in here who we talk about on the show a couple times is Joe Fowler. You have a couple cool Joe Fowler moments in there too. And that's what I mean. Like when I say the book is a smooth read because you weave these personal stories with the nuts and bolts of the of what happened, and you have these long form quotes. And I wanted to read this one because it takes the I see again. I'm not a writer. It takes the sterileness of what you would perceive as a real estate book, which what I did, and it transforms it into something more human. And so you say this. You say Walt and Joe had a special relationship. The Admiral often reminisced about some of his capers with Walt in Florida. He says Joe says Walt didn't live long enough to see us break ground in Disney World, but he used to travel all over the property with me in a Jeep. He loved it. I remember he wanted to see how Disney World would look from the top of the Contemporary Hotel. So we got the biggest damn utility crane in Florida, and the two of us got into the bucket, and they hoisted us straight up to where the lounge at the top of the Contemporary would be. I was so damn busy hanging on, hoping to get down, and he was so enthusiastic. Oh, Joe, look at this. This is going to be great. He could visualize it all. I could see enough to realize that everything in the plans was properly located. Oh my. He was a wonderful man. And like you didn't have the last sentence makes the whole, I don't know, man. It's just a beautiful quote, and it's a nice moment to include in there.
Yeah, and that's somebody who was so distinguished in his own right. I mean, it goes. I mean, I think it goes back so much to the earlier thing that you were talking about. Like sort of hands off, but it's like he had such well equipped folks to do what he needs to do and set the ball in motion that he can sort of go hands off, I guess. He knew the vision, he conveyed it, and then somebody like Fowler, it's like that guy's quite competent. He's going to get done what I need, and if he thinks I'm doing something wrong, he's going to push back, and he's probably right.
Yeah, and those are the
why
kind of people,
he wanted him,
right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's I think why Walt was that's why I think Walt was a genius, is because of the people he hired. And truly, like, from a business standpoint, from a managerial standpoint, he accepted those things. And I don't think you get a lot of that with high functioning CEOs or whatever. You don't, there's a lot of ego. And I don't think Walt, when he had it, but he also listened to people too. And you tell a good story about how Fowler was hired. It's all like quotes in his, and I encourage people to buy the book for a lot of reasons, but read that because Fowler basically was tricked into working for Disney. Right? And it was so awesome. It's such a good story, man.
But that shows you what a pitch man he was, right? Yes. Like that he bought in.
Yeah.
So much so he didn't know he got hoodwinked into the job. He didn't even know what his salary was, and it didn't mean anything. He liked this guy. He's like, oh, I'm in. We're going,
Yeah, that's how people
and everybody
feel.
There's like, that's sort of like a running theme through a lot of that. These folks just are very loyal and buy in.
Yeah, you know what? Which is funny because you hear a lot of the rumors, that people want to say, well, Walt was this, Walt was a bad guy, he was mean, he was racist, whatever, and it's like there's none of these people who have, like yourself, who have dug deep into his life. Other people like Neil Gabler, all these other people, nobody's found anything. And I can't see people who are as, kind-hearted and focused on minutia like a Fowler would work with someone like that. It doesn't, none of that lines up for me. And it's just every time I read a little bit more about the people that Walt surrounded himself with, I'm more convinced than ever that it's all just,
I'm
crap.
Jewish. Aaron Goldberg. You can't get any more Jewish sounding than that.
Well, that's true.
I mean, the sphere of Jewish folks around him since the 1930s and folks that he gave a lot of power to, he was not an anti-Semite. I mean, he came in 32, basically revolutionized merchandising and marketing. That he was a Jewish guy. Marty Sklar, Jewish guy. I mean, I could go down. You could run down the list. And these are people that he trusted so much to, and had so much faith in and responsibility for, blah, 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 blah. It's like, I mean, you get a big target on your back. And I think in a lot of ways, Disney always has a big target, him and the company in general. Just, it is what it is.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm a big Chapek apologist too. I get it. I don't know, man.
That's pretty funny.
Winding down here real fast because I know it's late where you're at, and I want to let you split.
No,
but
good.
One thing I noticed, or picked up on in your book, is you were talking about the press release that the studio put out about Walt's cancer. Now, like I said, I'm doing my own weird little research for my show, and from what I could tell, from what I read, the studio never put out a press release before he passed that he had cancer. But in the book, you'd mentioned it, and I'm absolutely not saying that you're wrong, of course.
No.
Yeah. I find it fascinating that everything that ever has been written about Walt Disney has been done. His life has been covered, right? But we still don't. I don't know. There's still people who disagree with like timelines. So can you tell me a little bit about that and how you found that out?
So I think that I pulled from newspaper archives.
Okay.
If you dig enough through a lot of the stories and a lot of the lore of Disney, the stories change over the decades.
Yes. Yeah.
They're the best storyteller, so they weave their own story. But that I pulled from, basically came from another book, The Disney Story, and I had a mountain of just pouring over, getting information about that time, what was released, what they said to the media. And again, it's like always that they use that same old polo injury or back injury, neck injury, blah, 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 blah. And I think, to be honest, I don't think Walt and the family did. I don't think the studio did either, that he was going to go as fast as he did. And it sort of caught them off guard. And it was just like, wait, what do we do? Like, wait, what are we going to do now?
I think the doctor was giving him like 6 months to a year or something like that when he came out and told the family.
Yeah.
And he was gone like 2 weeks later or something like that.
Later. Yeah. So, that period of time, I feel like it was chaotic obviously it was chaotic.
Yeah.
But what do you put out? What do you want to put out? What do you want the public to know? But so those came from newspaper. Did a lot of search of Southern California newspapers, and that paid off. Yeah.
I bless you for having the patience to.
Thank you.
To
I get lost in those. A lot of times I would read like tertiary stories that are on the same page, and I'm like, I'm not going to get anything done because I'm busy reading about this huge marijuana thing in like the 1940s, and like I remember one of them was like a daughter killed the mother, and it was because she was on marijuana, and I was like, wow.
Wait, the daughter killed the mother because the daughter was high on marijuana?
Yes.
Oh, geez. It's like the first death.
I probably saved that article. Sometimes I save them like, oh, this is too good. Like,
dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That should be like, that should definitely go on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny, like digging through. I'm definitely not a researcher, of your stature, but it's fun digging through some of this, and you find, I'm trying to think of a couple interesting, but this is how I find topics for other shows too. Like, the cryogenics thing that I'm working on, you start learning about the history of cryonics in America and what happened to all those bodies and how that happened. And it's just this ever.
It takes you down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it does.
You never think you'd ever go down. You do.
And that's why it takes so long to figure out, man.
I'm guilty of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, like I did another show on actually the conspiracy theories of Walt being an anti-Semite and whatever, and it led me down this hole of finding out about all these like pro-German protests in Southern California, and it's like, you don't hear about that stuff. It's like, what is going on?
Not only that, so you got to think about 1955, right? Disneyland opens. Southern California is a huge, strong presence of the Klan. Lots of sundown towns.
Yeah, wow.
That unfortunately black folks would have to drive through to get to Disneyland, and they did. So we're also other side of the country, the Jim Crow laws and the stuff going on with segregation. In 55, everybody was all are welcome, and I have pictures that from the opening day, with a huge variety of folks in the parks, and for 55, 56. So everybody was welcome.
It brought people together.
Brought people together. And,
See, I think that's
the
another
environment
book,
was still pretty hostile. So
I can imagine. I could, yeah. God, what a confusing time to be alive. What a confusing time to be, to be a different race, a non-white. You can't even put a friggin' name on it, because it's like you go, you get verbally attacked in the street, and then you go to Disneyland, and then things are fine, but they're also not. I feel like you can never feel comfortable. That's a lot of trauma. It's a lot of generational trauma to pass down too. Like that.
Oh yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. But I think it spoke volumes that, I can look at pictures and see black folks there on 1955 opening day. They felt safe enough and comfortable enough to go. And well,
I never thought about that. I mean, first of all, I didn't know about the sundown towns.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was really a thing then. But I guess this is what we're talking about with, Walt's legacy in general. The farther away you get from it and things like that, if we don't talk about it in schools and we don't learn about it, we're never going to know to put ourselves in other people's shoes, man.
Right. Yeah, because you wouldn't think to associate. But if you think about, if you distill down that time, it's a crazy...
Dude.
Yeah.
That's a book. Man, you can write 5 books on this conversation right now. I'll take 10%.
Maybe a few miniseries.
You got to, man. I tell you. I mean, I'm not like it's up to you. You're just going to get your camera and go. But, I think that'd be great. I think that would be this whole book would be a killer miniseries.
Oh, absolutely.
Disney Plus. 8. I'm going to 8 episodes now.
Wow. That's
I'm going 8. I'll put a treatment together. We'll work on it. It'll be good. Awesome.
Nice.
Hey, Aaron, go ahead.
If you have time for one lighter mystery to address, Aaron.
Absolutely.
I'm curious. There's that parcel of land, that parcel of acreage that is now the Bonnet Creek Resort.
Yes.
That's always fascinated me, why there's this chunk that isn't owned by Disney that's surrounded on multiple sides by Disney property. How did they not get that, with all the shenanigans going on, with all the really well done tactics? Were there any notes from Foster or any of the other guys who are working on this where they tried to get that parcel but couldn't?
They tried multiple times. It took them a long time. So it's if you think about it, it's like its own little island there. So Disney surrounds it on 3 sides. I-4 is the 4th side. So they tried multiple times, made lots of calls, lots of letters. The person who owned it was, I think they were in China. They bought the land speculating that it was close enough to the Space Coast that maybe, and it was adjacent, it was going to be near highways and 95 and I-4, that there could be warehousing, and they were approached several times and they wouldn't sell. So Disney just went about and did whatever they and that Bonnet Creek, like, it's an actual creek, runs through their property. Like it runs through the Bonnet Creek property, but also runs and goes through the Disney property. Eventually the property was sold and it was developed later. We get so there's, like, I think the Waldorf Astoria is back there and some other hotels and resorts. But yeah, that's a weird anomaly in the story that didn't get,
couldn't get it done.
I think that they would get that one because it was like decent land and it was speculated upon, in a similar way of speculation on some sort of industry. And they couldn't get it. They tried multiple times.
They actually found out who it was. So
what's that?
So they did find out who it was at the time.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. Yeah, they didn't know who it was. Yeah, they were rebuffed. They didn't want to sell.
Very interesting.
Yeah. There was another parcel, and I can't remember the name of the parcel, but Disney tried multiple times to buy it before they built, after they built, and they literally bought the land 2 years ago.
Wow.
Yes. I think
Never
8 or
stop
9 million. They wanted the land. Yeah.
Jeez, man.
I think it was 2 years ago they got the land, and I can't remember the name, but again, he was a farmer. He had a ton of land, and he basically was like, I don't need the money. I'm not interested in selling. his family
Excellent.
still owns the land, and they eventually 2 years ago they sold for $8 or $9 million. Yeah,
Good.
I wonder if they got anything else for it too, because in your story you tell, or in your book you tell a story about a family who was like, "Yeah, we'll sell this to you, but we want passes to Disney World and Disneyland for life." And
yeah,
they were like, "Yeah, okay, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it."
yeah. I think there was a woman she was in Miami and owned the land, and she says, "I want to send my grandkids." She didn't want to sell either, and she says, "I want to send my grandkids to college. I would like the money, although I also want the pass to Disney World and Disneyland." All right, how about it?
Okay, you gotta love it, man.
Yeah.
Let's a couple things, and we'll wind down here. Epcot. Speaking
Yes.
of Epcot, I like talking about Epcot. It's fascinating to me. In broad strokes, or get specific as you want, whatever. Do you think Walt's original concept, because you have it, and like I said, you have basically the transcript of his pitch, the Epcot film, basically, in here talking about Epcot. Do you think his concept could have worked? Like if he had survived and he had lived and it would have, do you think it would have made it from paper to physical property thing?
I'm not a fiction writer. I'm not that creative. However, I often say there's like a good book or a good miniseries there. What if Walt lived another 10 years? Right? I think it happens. Yeah. I think the only person that could pull that off would be Walt Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it seems so far-fetched, I mean, his whole career is like bet big on himself, didn't have enough money, but bet big on everything.
Yeah.
Things that everybody said he could do, he did. And he was
It's
way
true.
ahead of his time on a lot of things. So
Yeah,
I
he
think
really was, man.
I think Epcot would have come to fruition. Because if you see the bits and pieces that that still linger, People Mover and things like that I think he actually would have pulled it off. I don't know. So even if he lived 5 years, because if he would have got to the point of putting really detailed and how and whatever, I think they would have, really saw it through. But again, 2 weeks and he's gone, and that's that.
Yeah, I wonder if it was also an infrastructure thing too, because in the pictures or whatever, it's like here's the idea for it, but then he dies and Roy goes, well, what am I going how am I going to figure this out?
Yeah,
How to make it work? I think it's a different story.
right. I think he would have pulled it off. I mean,
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I think even if he lived 5 years, we would have had something.
Yeah. Yeah. Something more akin to what he
Something
wanted.
way more. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because that's sort of playing out here in Northern California. It actually just hit the news.
I saw that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I immediately thought of that.
yeah, it's there's an Air Force base up here, and there was a company, a shadow company, buying land around it, something like 800 acres or whatever. And people were speculating on what is it? What's it going to be? And it's just a bunch of Silicon Valley people going, yeah, we want to build the city of the future, basically.
Huh.
So like, oh wow, this is just sort of Epcot 2.0,
I've heard
man.
that somewhere before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
back
the
to the 1960s.
Yeah, but I guess the county's like, it's not gonna work because there's no infrastructure here. I mean, the weird highways we have out here are sort of cluttered anyways. What are you guys talking about?
Yeah.
But they're gung ho on it. All right, man. I love a city of tomorrow. Why not?
Go at it.
There was somebody in New Jersey before I moved to Florida. I lived in New Jersey, and he was outside of it was like Central Jersey, and he wanted to do the same thing. And he would run commercials on TV and try to was getting funding, and he had money and then all of a sudden you just stopped hearing about it. I don't think that happens now. I don't care how much money the Silicon Valley folks have. It doesn't happen. I don't think it happens.
I don't think it happens either.
No, it's just it could have happened in 1960, in the 60s.
Yes.
In Florida, in the middle of nowhere, with a lot of money and talent and people who would want to see this through. It absolutely could happen.
Well, and limited regulations.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest, right? But
Yeah.
now,
Less
here
permitting,
you're not gonna. People are gonna
get
know what
anything
you're
done.
doing.
You want to do something at your house, it takes months to get a permit to change your front door or something.
Right.
Yeah. You want to build a whole city? Like
Yeah,
not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen, dude. No, sorry. A connected house. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and that speaks to Reedy Creek again. It goes back to
Yeah.
and they were green before, like Disney was green and did environmental things before that was even a thing. Like they were very conscious of the wetlands and doing. I mean, yeah, they were, the whole thing now is just funny with DeSantis because, back in 2003, 2004, when there was rumors that Comcast wanted to take over Disney and do the hostile takeover, the state freaked out and wanted to know what would happen should the property change hands. How does it work? How is everything going right now? And what would happen if somebody else were to come in and take over? And basically the end result was Disney's has been a great neighbor. They've done a marvelous job over the past 40 years. And the infrastructure is in place that it would be seamless basically if somebody else took over. They did everything the right way.
Oh, wow.
And that they hoped, and the state hoped that it didn't happen.
Jeez.
So.
Well, that was before they were indoctrinating people.
Yes.
I don't know if you knew that about them, but
Craziness.
They're heavy indoctrinators.
Crazy.
Oh man. Okay, before we let you go, again, I've said this like 3 times now. I have a little 7 questions that I like to ask our guests.
Lay 'em on me.
And they're sort of, not really, one word answer if you can.
Yeah.
They're sort of like the inside the actor studio questions.
Yeah.
From that old show, right? Okay. What is your favorite Disney attraction?
That's tough. Haunted Mansion.
All right.
Same.
Yeah, same. I was hoping you were going to say barges, though, but
There we got that guy back there.
Nice.
Look at that thing, man. God. What is your least favorite Disney attraction?
Ooh.
We all have one. Mine is multiple, probably.
And it's called
I gotta be honest.
Autopia. Just kidding.
I have a couple too. I don't need to be on a carousel. I mean, I get it works,
That is fair.
but I don't need that taking up all that space.
There you go. Okay, I like it. Pie-eyed Mickey or round-eyed Mickey?
Pie-eyed Mickey.
Same. What old ride should they bring back to the parks?
Oh,
Now, you and Disney World have a lot to draw from, so I'll allow you that too if you want.
I'm going Epcot. I'm going Horizons.
There you go. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
What current ride should they remove?
Oh, I got a long list for that one.
Give me 3.
Basically, anything that's been put in Epcot post like 2000. Is that a good answer?
Not bad.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
That takes a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is your favorite Disney character?
I love Mickey Mouse.
Classic Mickey guy. All right.
Yeah.
And finally, if you could travel back in time and meet Walt Disney, what would you tell him?
Stop smoking.
That is
Yes.
by far the most popular
travel
answer.
back in time and bring like a nicotine patch or some of that gum.
Yeah.
Hey, Walt, you know that kills you, right?
Yeah. Yo, we need to make a switch here.
Yeah, 9 out of 10 doctors don't agree, Walt.
Yeah.
It's,
Maybe we'll bring a
Bad for
vape
you.
pen or something. Can I show you how to vape?
Can you imagine, man, that would be a funny
If
bit
he's-
too. Like bring Walt into 2023, he's just hooting
Yeah.
on a vape pen, just
Get
blasting puffy clouds.
you into vaping, please.
Oh man.
Where I think Walt would have it like on the chain around his neck too. so
Oh
he
yeah.
could
Oh,
hoot
yeah.
on it.
Easy access.
A little cartridge just on the neck.
You know, like they have like people have like Skittles flavored. He would have like chili flavored.
Yeah.
Oh God,
What was it'd be
Scotch
like
mist.
flavored?
Scotch,
Yeah.
Scotch mist flavored. I
Yeah.
love a Scotch mist. What is it? Scotch and ice. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Definitely don't need the word mist in there.
No.
Yeah.
Well, what you did is you missed the mixer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aaron, thanks, man. Go to aaronhgoldberg.com and you can learn about all the books that Aaron has out. So Buying Disney World is not your most recent. What was your most recent again?
Presenting Disneyland.
Presenting Disneyland. Let me tell you, check this out. I'm going to buy this book. If you go on the cover, it is a photo you've never seen. I know, Aaron, you said like all these photos are basically like never been seen before, but it's like I don't know. It'll freak you out. It'll freak you out if you think you've seen all the pictures of Disneyland. You haven't. Check it out.
I've looked at a lot of pictures and I was like, that's the cover shot because
So good. There's a forklift and a scaffold and a whole thing. You're like, what is going on, dude?
and I got Bob Gerder right the forward.
Did.
That's
man.
awesome.
Man.
And it tells a
Bob
funny
Gerder.
story about opening day. About
I
running
bet.
over Sammy Davis Jr.
That's
Bob
amazing.
Gurr, man. He seems like a kick in the pants.
Right? God
Yeah.
bless that guy.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely, man. We were lucky enough to get Rolly Crump on the show a couple years ago before he passed away.
That's awesome.
It was so good. We had to go through his wife because he was like hard of hearing or whatever.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about his book, which if you haven't read it, it's an awesome read.
Have. It's amazing.
So good. And, I haven't really done many book interviews. And so I'm like sort of going through the timeline of his book. And I asked him a question. He goes, well, it's all in my book. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I don't know. And then I was like, okay,
right.
we'll let you go, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just, but it was just like the class. It's just such a Rolly Crump thing to do. Just be like, I talked about this already. What do you want?
Yeah,
I don't know,
book,
sir. Gee, leave me alone for a second.
It's a good book. I think that one of the best stories from that thing is there's a lot of good stories, but for some reason the one that sticks into my head is, so it goes back to Epcot. I love Epcot. Was the electric umbrella? How they named somebody was selling electric umbrellas, and he thought they were like a pieces of shit, and they were like terrible, and he's like, but I said the name to Michael Eisner, and he's like, oh, that's a great name. So he named the restaurant the Electric Umbrella.
It is a good name.
It always stuck in my head. And it's like, yeah, the umbrella was a piece of shit, but Eisner liked the name, so we got the Electric Umbrella.
The name works.
Yeah. The story that always sticks out for me from that book was the when he dropped off his date who was worked the front desk at the studio. And he rode into the studio on a motorcycle.
Yes.
Just dropped her off right at her desk and rode the bike out. And it's like, but Walt loved him. He had carte blanche, basically. I mean, he could just I feel like he could do no wrong. He was such a cocky ass.
Oh, yeah.
Handsome as all get out. And I was like, come on. How do you not just flex a little bit like that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Aaron, where else can people find out about you? You're on Twitter and all the social
Twitter,
medias?
Instagram, all the usual suspects there at Aaron H. Goldberg. Yeah.
Cool. Aaron, I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much
My
for taking your time. Yeah.
Of course. My pleasure.
We're going to take a quick break, folks. We're going to come right back, and we're going to maybe do a little bit of news and then wrap it up. So hang on, everyone. We'll be right back. It's Ears Up. Gee, sorry, guys, but that guy bought 14 churros. I'm all sold out.
And now, back to the show.
All right. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. I want to give you guys an update on our concierge experience.
Yes.
Because, we're going to the parks in January. It's official now, mid-January sometime. I don't want to say the time frame because I don't want a mob of people to meet us at the gate trying to get pictures and autographs.
Oh, yeah. No, it would really disrupt Disneyland's flow.
Yeah,
so we definitely...
it really would. Yeah, actually, Disney reached out to us and they said, please don't. And I said, look, because we can't afford a plaid. And they said, well, then that's fine, but just don't announce that you're coming. And we'll, we'll try to, they're going to treat us like Michael Jackson did with his kids where they just put a blanket on us.
Yeah.
So you thanked Bob and hung up on him unexpectedly.
Yeah, well, I said actually, yeah, well, right, yeah. Iger's like, so if you could do that, because when he talks to me, he gets East Coast. He goes, yeah, if you could do that, that'd be really, really great. The family would appreciate it. And I said, oh, that's cool. Oh, Bob, before I go, I want to tell you something. He goes, yeah, what's that? And I hang up. That's my trick.
That's a good one.
It's my one weird trick. No, we finally booked our thing. So, I was talking with Jimmy. And I realized, talking to Taryn afterwards, that this is a perfect, if you're like us, concierge is perfect for you. Because the way we plan vacations is we go, yeah, let's, for example, we'll probably stay at the Marriott or whatever. And then we figure out where we're going. Look at the map, go, oh, well, let's look at some other hotels because you always got to be price conscious, right? You got to fit your budget. And we look around and go, oh, well, what about the Anaheim hotel? Okay, well, let's look at that. We check that out and we go, oh, well, what about this one? Oh, well, the Candy Cane Inn's right here. Well, you know what? Just for funsies. What's the Disneyland Hotel going to be? What's the California Grand? What about the Paradise? And then we just kind of go down this spiral, and it takes weeks for us to plan a vacation because at some point I don't want to talk about it anymore. I get tired of talking about it. I'm done. My brain can't handle any more talk about which hotel to stay at. It doesn't matter. And whatever. But with concierge for Jimmy, all we did was go, this is when we want to go, and this is what we're looking for. And he gave me like 4 options. I'm like, oh, this is great. What about the Disneyland Hotel? So I sort of made him do the whole thing that we do, but it takes half the time that it would normally take for us. And, you know, especially now with Disneyland, you still need resis. My fear is that we would just wait. Like, if it was up to me, we wouldn't be booked right now. Because we'd still be going, well, I don't know. Should we do this? Should we go Disneyland Club level? I don't know. Is that worth it? Because we haven't been in so long.
That was a 2-day conversation in our house.
Yeah. But Jimmy was helpful all the way through, and he got back to me right away with answers and prices, and we are officially booked.
And I want to say from a different perspective,
Can't do it.
am a planner. I actually enjoy going down these rabbit holes and not knowing which hotel we're going to be at, but researching all of them. And so using like a travel planner, there was a hesitation there because I do enjoy doing that. There's a part of me that likes that part of the process of vacationing. But I will say, like, working with Jimmy and working with concierge, it helped narrow the playing field, right? Like, it helped me just sort of narrow down my options and go, I can still look up every picture I can find of the Anaheim Hotel. Because here's the thing, I'm a little bit of a hotel snob. So there's going to be certain hotels that just by the pictures, if I Google image search, I'm going to be like, nah, not doing that for 4 days. Sorry. And then there's other ones where I'm like, oh, okay, we'll see. Let's compare this to essentially the Disneyland Hotel, which I know what that's like. I know what the Marriott's like. Let's compare it to these other hotels that I know.
Yeah.
But it really did help. Like, where we're staying is a different hotel than we've ever stayed at. And that is sort of an uncomfortable decision for me because I'm a hotel snob.
It is.
But I also trust Jimmy, for one. I don't know why, but
yeah,
I do.
why? I guess
Yeah,
he's too handsome to lie to us.
Well, and because he's doing it for concierge, not for ears up, maybe.
Okay.
That's why I trust him.
All right, that's fair.
But yeah, I was still able to do some of my own research, but it helped again just narrow that down from like 100,000 hotels down to 5.
Yeah, it was super easy because he quoted Paradise Pier and didn't quote Disneyland Hotel, and he said Paradise Pier club level. And so we're like, well, first of all, don't ever put that seed into my mind because we are dumb enough to go deeper into debt to do that. But what about the Disneyland Hotel club level? Why not? And then suddenly that was the bar that we had to meet with everything. Then now it's like, well, if it's not the club level, then what else is it really going to be?
Dude, you guys,
is it really worth it?
Oh, the Disneyland eyes or Disneyland glasses. Like they talk about rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
There is Disneyland glasses where all of a sudden you're like, oh, like what, $5,000 to stay at a hotel? That's like nothing. It's fine.
Yeah, and, well, and then we go, well, but it includes tickets too.
It
so
includes tickets.
It's not that
it's
bad.
Not that bad.
Yeah.
No.
And then you look at the price to go to the Anaheim Hotel, it's like $2,000. You're like, oh, okay.
And honestly, even that didn't trigger for me until I actually went and looked because I wanted to see I wanted to see the Disneyland Hotel. I wanted to do it myself first because I needed to see it. And I saw that it was $850 a night or something. And I was like, okay, what are we doing? Yeah. Oh my God.
We're talking, we're having fun.
We cannot do that. We didn't win the lotto. Like, why are we even entertaining this idea? But we entertained it for a very long time, but we're not doing it.
It was fun while it lasted.
Because now we can buy stuff in the park.
Yeah. Like food.
Yeah.
To eat.
That's fair.
And like we can buy food like next week.
Yeah. So. But yeah, anyway, it was great. And, I have a reminder set to get our park reservations, which is still weird to me that you can buy tickets. That's what Jimmy was saying. He's like, I don't understand because you buy tickets, you tell them the dates. So they don't have the inventory for those dates because they know you're coming.
Yeah. So why do you need also a reservation?
And I can't make a reservation until next week.
especially if you have park hoppers.
And they already
Like,
bought. Right.
It's not like they need to even know which park you're going to be in. You're going to be in both. Like what
It's
what
so weird,
what
dude.
do you need to know?
It's weird. But yeah, anyway, so check that out. Go to concierge.com if you want to live like a king or queen. Go to concierge.com and they'll take care of you, man. They really do. They lay it all out for you. You get a little phone call and they give you exactly what you're looking for and a little bit extra too, which does, help. Either it sets in your mind what you want or it makes you change your mind a little bit and live outside, live dangerously. But that price for the whole package for the tickets in the hotel was cool to see. You didn't have to do any math. No math here.
No. My next thing that I'm going to I'm just going to drop this on you now. I was looking at the Carthay Lounge alfresco dining. I didn't know they were still doing that.
I'm going to curse at you. Hold on a second.
So maybe Jimmy can help.
March in the past, present, and
Not saying
future
anything.
with all the news that's fit to cover. It's the Ears Up Disney News.
Oh, all right, everybody. Let's do a little Disney news. And we're going to wind down the night, huh? The chat's going off right now. We're about the Disney Locarno, whatever. I don't know how it's said.
Never heard of it.
The
Lorcana?
card game. Yeah, Lorcana. There you go.
Arcana.
The new card game that's like Magic the Gathering. And we've been talking about it in Discord for a while. That released the other day, well, a couple weeks ago, I think. And, already in the bulk packs or in the booster packs, you can get like the really expensive cards. And people are on eBay, of course, selling them for $1,500 or whatever.
Jeez.
And I have my gaming friends. This dude, he's like, I paid off my medical bills, fixed my car, and bought a PS5 with a game from selling individual Locarno cards on eBay. He just went and bought like 5 booster packs, got a bunch of friggin' cards, sold them, and there you go.
That is wild.
Yeah. And so RGH, he's in the Discord last week and he's like, yeah, I, went and found a bunch of packs or whatever. I'm like, are you going to split those up and sell them? Well, no, you should. You're going to make a lot of money on them. If you pull some good packs like that Simba, there's a Simba foil card or whatever. So each booster pack is guaranteed, I guess, to have a foil card, and those are the expensive ones.
Okay.
And the Simba is like $1,500, going for $1,500, $2,500 on
Already?
eBay. Yeah, already.
Jeez.
And so my thing is, like, if you want to play that game, buy the decks now if you can, buy the booster decks now, and just rip them apart to sell them, because they're going to reprint. If it's anything like Magic the Gathering, they're going to have different editions, and each subsequent edition is going to be worth less and less, but it's still going to be the same. It's going to be the same function.
Yeah.
So buy it now, make some money on the secondary market, which I know I don't really like to, do that, especially because
Yeah, it's
we've been
not
on
that
record saying don't resell
do that.
popcorn buckets. But this is different, I don't know. This is an already established black market.
Well,
Mhm.
and it's not taking away from somebody else having it.
Right.
That's a
Yeah,
difference.
something like that. Let's go something around that. feels right. Yeah. All right, I got a couple Disney news stories, and we're gonna split a Reno. We were talking on the last show about New Orleans Square and Tiana's Palace opening up and all that kind of stuff, and I came across this article. I thought it was pretty interesting. Disneyland ships in bread from New Orleans for Tiana's Place sandwiches.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay,
Seems unnecessary.
it does, because instantly I'm going, if I'm a cast member and my union or whatever is asking for more money and the company's saying, no, we don't have it. And then I read that you're shipping in bread from halfway across the country. Get right out of my face with this nonsense. Get out of town. You mean you can't find a bakery in LA to make bread as good as you can buy it in New Orleans? I don't believe you. You're full of trash. Go away.
Well,
This is such a dumb infrastructure thing to do. I don't like
I
it.
also would like to know if they truly are like does Disney have a contract with a bakery and it's literally being shipped by this small little bakery or whatever in New Orleans, or is this through Cisco? and it's just from New Orleans.
I don't know.
You know,
I mean, we're never going to know.
to me,
but
that's a huge difference.
well, let me
because
read the article. Disneyland foodies craving an authentic taste of Louisiana will need to look no further than the po' boy and muffaletta sandwiches on the menu at the new Tiana's Place restaurant in New Orleans Square. We are bringing the bread in from New Orleans, Disney Parks food and beverage director Michelle Gondreau said. Tiana's Place will open, it actually opens today. So there you go. Locally sourced ingredients from Louisiana will be shipped to Tiana's Place or Tiana's Palace. It should be Tiana's Place. I'm sorry. That's with the way I read it. It should be Tiana's Place. It shouldn't be Tiana's Palace. I don't like that. For a New Orleans-inspired menu that includes gumbo, shrimp, and grits, red beans and rice, lemon-filled beignets and chicory coffee, as well as po' boy and muffaletta sandwiches. The ingredients are critical to tell the story. There's no story, dude. Come on. It's food. At some point, it's just food. Like, not everything needs to be a story, Hoss. That's from Disneyland Resort Culinary Director John State. Sourcing this bread wasn't an easy task. Sure it was. We tried to duplicate the bread here. We tried to make it ourselves. We tried to work with somebody local to make it for us, and we just couldn't get there. I don't believe you. It's a roll. It's a soft white roll. There's no way you couldn't do it. And ingredients from Louisiana, what? Flour? Whoa, that's so crazy, dude. I guarantee you that all the places in New Orleans don't use locally sourced flour. They use the cheapest flour that you can possibly get because they're trying to reach their margins.
Why are you so mad about that?
Because I don't like it, because it's just another way that Disney tries to inject this false sense of story into their crap. It doesn't need to be there. This doesn't need to be an article. Why are we doing this?
It doesn't need to be an article, but can I just say that
you're mad at me that I'm frustrated. I can see it in your face.
Do I seem mad at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God. I think it's these kinds of details that started this show that make people love Disneyland. And so why is this different than any of the other small details that they do?
I don't know, because
special?
the more I learn about the way Disney does things and why they do it and how well they treat their employees, it pisses me off when I see things like this, because they cut so much out of things like the extended queue for Haunted Mansion that's going to have a lot of Museum of the Weird stuff. They cut that because they didn't have it in the budget. But here they are shipping bread from Louisiana. Like, the things that they focus on, it seems sort of insane to me.
What if they didn't have to pay? What if this was a sponsorship?
I don't. Well, what if? I mean, what if this was fake and Louisiana doesn't even really exist?
So you're saying that there's on the menu, Taryn, that they've got a little Joe's Bakery provides bread.
Yeah.
Go to eat at Joe's when you're in Louisiana.
But like, what if anything? I don't play with what ifs, Taryn, because it's not in the story. Disneyland chefs made multiple research trips to New Orleans while developing the menu for Tiana's Palace, again, Drew said during a media preview. One Big Easy research trip included 18 stops at restaurants in 2.5 days. Included stops at 18 restaurants in 2.5 days. That sounds like when we were going to go to New Orleans. That's what I wanted for us. Go to all these restaurants.
Yeah.
Louisiana source ingredients in Tiana's Palace recipes include andouille sausage, cane syrup. Oh, yeah. You got to love locally sourced cane syrup and rice, along with Tabasco and Crystal. See, this is what I'm talking about. There's no story. Tabasco, no, dude. At least Crystal, you got that. There's other, like, better, hot sauces out there than Tabasco. So you're trying to tell me that you're shipping bread halfway across the country and the best thing you can come up with for a hot sauce is Tabasco? These people don't know. They don't know. It's critical that the one key component you start with is the bread. The bread is very light. It helps the ingredients stand out. Oh, okay. Yeah, cool, dude. Disneyland is buying bread for both the po' boy and muffaletta sandwiches from the same producer. Disneyland chefs won't say which bakery is supplying the po' boy rolls and the muffaletta loaves, how often the shipments will be arriving, and whether the fresh bread will be traveling cross country by plane or truck. What does it matter? Who cares? Why is that a question? The 1896 Liedenheimer Baking Company is the last of the old school bakeries in New Orleans and responsible for a majority of the city's bread supply. The maker of po' boy rolls and muffaletta loaves distributes its bread nationally, including to California. So maybe that's them. Who knows, man? Yeah. So anyway,
sounds like it could be.
there you go. If you're a foodie and you love a good, out of state bread, because everyone, the one thing everyone knows about bread, Taryn and Eric, is that the freshest bread is not really where it's at. It's that 2 or 3 day old bread. That's when you know it's good.
RGH is making a case in the chat here, and he's kind of right. The bread that is used for the iconic, Chicago beef sandwiches is a very specific bread, and it's generally not the freshest because you want a specific crust on the outside so that it soaks up the juice on the inside, and it still has a little bit of that chewy texture on the outside. So that's a very specific example, but it definitely hits close to home. Not physically, but maybe in my past where I maybe lived in that city.
Randy's not off camera throwing sandwiches at you.
No, but we have frozen Toronto bread in our freezer right now. So if she was, it would hurt.
Oh, well, then there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Look, it's just one of those things. Okay. It's just one of those days. Here's another story. Disneyland replaces Fantasmic with a new nighttime projection show.
Okay.
Yeah. The new Heartbeat of New Orleans will debut on September 29th on the Rivers of America at Disneyland, while Fantasmic undergoes an extensive makeover through spring of 2024. Hopefully stop it catching on fire. A new nighttime projection show featuring a jazz score that may be set to music from Soul will play on the Rivers of America, while Disneyland retools the Fantasmic nighttime spectacular following the inferno that consumed the show's fire-breathing dragon. The new Heartbeat of New Orleans nighttime projection show will debut. I just read that. Disneyland describes the new nighttime show as a, quote, living mural set to a jazz score that tells a whimsical tale of a mischievous bayou frog lured to New Orleans by the music he hears in the distance. The art installation projected on Tom Sawyer's Island's waterfront buildings along the Rivers of America will animate original artwork created by Disney Live Entertainment graphic designer Marcella Sweat. Sweat? S-W-E-T-T. Can't be Sweat. But I think it can't be sweet either. It has got to be Sweat.
E-E-T?
E-T-T.
Oh, E-T-T.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like Sweat.
Yeah. Sweat is best known for her sidewalk chalk art creations in downtown Disney for the Celebrate Soulfully events during Black Music Month. The timing of the new jazz-centric nighttime projection show coincides with Disney Live Entertainment's hiring of performers to portray jazz pianist Joe Gardner from Pixar's 2020 Soul animated film. They are seeking jazz piano soloists who can engage with Disneyland visitors within the story of the Soul film, according to the Disney Auditions website. Musicians must be available for in-person callbacks on September 12th in Anaheim for a role that pays. Well, Eric, how much would you pay? Or what's your hourly rate? If you're a jazz musician, a jazz pianist, a piano soloist who can, perform and also interact with guests and whatever, what's your hourly rate?
Ooh, at Disneyland. Did Disneyland approach me, or am I,
you auditioned?
seeking the work? Okay,
You're seeking the work. Yeah. So you need money.
Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking I'd like 50 an hour, but they're going to give me 25.
Close. 41 to 64 an hour.
Oh, so that's not bad. Okay.
Doesn't sound bad.
Okay. That's where I quoted I'd be comfortable. Okay.
Yeah. And there you go. That's it. Speaking of things that are it, summer is here, and our friends at the 21st Amendment are celebrating the return of the warmer days with their popular and everyone's favorite seasonal beer, Hell or High Watermelon Wheat. The brewers at the 21st Amendment brew an American wheat beer with real watermelon juice, creating a refreshing, fruity, and quenching beer, or what they affectionately call summer in a can. Hell or High Watermelon Wheat will make any weekend barbecue or beach time activity that much better. When visiting the California Bay Area, be sure and stop in at the 21st Amendment's San Francisco Brew Pub at 563 2nd Street, just 2 blocks from where baseball is played. And also, be sure and visit their brewery tap room just across the bay in San Leandro with an outdoor beer garden. And I will say, if you are going to do either one of those, both places have amazing food. Just in case you didn't know, a brew pub usually has food. 2&A knocks it out of the park with food.
Very good food. Huge
That's
menu.
a baseball pun, yeah. Okay,
I get it.
There you go. Last article I want to go over, and then we're going to get out of here. This is from The Verge, and this is relatively recent news, but this headline was awesome. Bob Iger and Bob Chapek's CEO battle made Disney the pettiest place on earth.
Yeah. That is a good title.
Yeah.
And also very accurate.
When Bob Iger stepped down as CEO of Disney, he butted heads with his handpicked successor, Bob Chapek. But we really didn't know just how bad and how petty some of the things Iger did to express his unhappiness with Chapek's decision were until now. This report from CNBC gives us a glimpse at what went on behind the scenes at Disney, spanning from Chapek's appointment in 2020 to Iger's takeover in 2022. And this author says, let me tell you, some of the drama that went on here is akin to Cinderella with CEOs. Here are the pettiest moments we learned about. Yeah. Despite his departure as CEO, CNBC reports that Iger wasn't ready to give up his expansive office at Disney's studio in Burbank. After all, he would remain a Disney executive, he would remain as Disney's executive chair for the next 22 months. The office came with a private shower that Iger reportedly used following his 4 a.m. workouts.
Wow.
4 a.m. You're up before 4 a.m. What are you doing?
Yeah.
On days when Iger would have to attend an event later on, he would take another shower in the office. Iger told Chapek, quote, that he lived for those 2 shower days.
Jeez.
God, touch grass, kid. There's more to live for than taking a shower twice a day. Meanwhile, Chapek was left with a smaller, showerless office on the same floor. Imagine you're like sharing a wall with a guy you replaced and you hear him humming in the shower and it's just the shared wall. Oh, man. It's like The Odd Couple, but weirder.
Yeah.
As reported by CNBC, Iger's office bathroom had some choice decor, including a framed collage containing newspaper and magazine clippings about Disney's acquisition of Marvel.
That's amazing.
Bob Ego over here, man.
Wow.
There was also a modified movie poster of Clint Eastwood's The Iger Sanction, which follows an assassin who exits retirement to take on one final job that replaced Iger with Iger. It's Eiger is the name. Right. What a freak, dude. Iger started regretting the decision to make Chapek CEO as early as 2 weeks after Chapek's appointment. When Iger, Chapek, and other Disney executives flew to North Carolina for Disney's annual meeting, CNBC reports that Iger gave Chapek the unexpected task of leading the question and answer session instead of Iger, even though the new CEO had only attended one annual meeting in his 27 years at Disney.
Oh, geez.
CNBC reports that following 2 hours of general preparation with Iger, Chapek went to a private area at the back of the plane to study the information he needed to know. Iger apparently didn't like that. He reportedly told his friends that when he realized he may have made a mistake, as he thought Chapek would work with him side by side for the next 22 months instead of doing his own thing. I'm sorry, this reframes. If you ever thought Chapek was a dunce, this should reframe everything for you. Iger is such an egomaniac that he can't handle another grown-ass man, a successful businessman, moving to the back of the private plane to study. That blew his mind. He can't fathom that. Why would you need to study over there? Why can't you study before me? I know everything. I know the whole thing.
Well, what if you have questions? If you get, I'm right here. I'm right here.
Yeah.
What if you want to know how much we spent on that? I know.
But if you're way out there, you're too tired to come over here, but how are you ever going to know?
Oh, man.
Even as executive chair, Iger was reportedly miffed People don't use the word miffed enough. I love that. Miffed at Chapek for not including him in company decisions. CNBC reports that Iger privately vented to his friends that he, quote, felt like he was on a bus, that the other passengers wanted him to drive, but he couldn't reach the steering wheel.
Well, and that's why he's back.
Picturing a tiny Chapek now.
A tiny Iger. Like, I can't
Tiny
reach
Iger.
it. I can't reach the steering wheel. Mommy, help me. Mommy, Daddy, help me, please. I can't drive the bus. Bobby wants to drive the big bus, but he can't. Well, Bobby, you know that you were driving the bus and you decided to let the other Bobby do it. I know, but he doesn't do it as good as I do. I just want it.
Oh
A crybaby. And also, look, I've said things to my friends. Please never be quoted. I never want to read quotes about what I've heard or what I've told you in CNBC in the future. Please, yeah, get new friends.
Yeah, his friends suck.
If my friends were quoted saying anything about me, yeah, I know that I'm not a valued person. So to me, Iger just isn't valued by his friends because they're just like telling on him.
Yeah.
Even as, miffed, bus, that's right. Iger surmised that Chapek wouldn't be the, quote, obedient lieutenant that Iger became to his predecessor, former Disney CEO Michael Eisner. So Iger was pissed that Chapek was actually like doing the job and wasn't just licking boots like he did with Eisner. That's what I get out of that.
He just didn't do things the same way, and he didn't like that. And
Yeah.
I get that. I can see both sides. I mean, I get that. Even if you quit your job, you're kind of annoyed about the person that you have to train for the 2 weeks. Like,
it just doesn't seem
you're not
like
gonna
these
do it
are
that-
things that you should be wondering about. You know, like, how could you have made such a big, quote unquote, mistake? I don't know. His judgment is just weird. In the midst of the COVID pandemic, a report from the New York Times suggested that Iger had, quote, effectively returned to running the company even after Chapek's appointment as CEO. Iger didn't deny this claim, writing in an email to the Times, quote, a crisis of this magnitude and its impact on Disney would necessarily result in my actively helping Bob and the company contend with it, particularly since I ran the company for 15 years. This didn't sit well with Chapek, who called up Iger and said he, quote, didn't need a savior.
this is petty.
I love
it.
They just did not like each other.
No, but honestly, I'm full steam ahead on Team Chapek more than I ever have been in my entire life. This is awesome. Good for Bob Chapek. I swear to God, I don't need a savior, dog. Go away. Go away. You elected me to do this job. The board signed off on it. And now you're being a dick. Go away. I don't need you. In 2021, the Chapek-controlled Disney stirred up issues with Black Widow star Scarlett Johansson when it revealed its plans to release the Marvel film in theaters and on Disney Plus for an added charge. But Johansson's contract didn't account for a streaming release, leading to a lawsuit that Chapek reportedly thought Iger would handle, as he had a long relationship with her agent and knew Scarlett Johansson. Despite these connections, Iger didn't step in. According to CNBC, Iger believed the situation was a, quote, clear business matter, and that, quote, if Chapek wanted to be CEO, he should be CEO. This is such a retaliatory, like, non-intervention thing.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to be, you're over there at the back of the plane studying. I'm trying to reach the friggin' wheel of the bus, dog. You want to drive the bus? Drive the bus, baby. Iger also didn't speak up during a meeting Disney held with its lawyers, with CNBC reporting that he believed the discussions felt like amateur hour. While both Chapek and Iger eventually signed off on a public statement about Johansson's lawsuit, CNBC says neither approved of its harsh tone, which implied the actor was just after more money. However, CNBC says neither Iger nor Chapek, quote, stopped its release because each believed the other should be in charge. Iger reportedly told Chapek to issue a public apology, but Chapek declined. Sources tell CNBC that Iger didn't even think about apologizing. Here's another one. When Iger held a retirement party for himself, What a way to
It
start.
doesn't come off right.
No, what a way to start a sentence. But that's exactly what happened, right? When Iger held a retirement party for himself, CNBC reports that he reluctantly invited Chapek, who canceled his plans in order to attend the gathering. During Iger's speech, he noticeably left out Chapek, who sat away from Iger while visibly miserable, which is a direct quote.
We read about that before, yeah.
Visibly
Wow.
miserable. God, I want that on my headstone.
This should be a Bravo TV show.
It really should, man. Even after Iger stepped down as executive chair in 2021, Chapek still couldn't shake his influence. Iger still spoke with current and former Disney executives about Chapek and the company's future. Yeah, Iger seems like a petty bitch. I'm sorry, this man sucks. Some of whom asked him to return to the company. CNBC reports, additionally, Iger reportedly met with Christina Shockey, Disney's newly appointed chief communications officer, which CNBC says Chapek viewed as, quote, dining with the enemy. Yeah, I mean, if your board is actively meeting with a guy you replaced, yeah, I'd be a little miffed as well. On top of all this, I don't normally read like all the articles, but this is too good, man. On top of all this, Iger recently hinted at selling some of Disney's linear channels, an idea of Chapek's that Iger reportedly hadn't been fond of in the past. Chapek also pitched a streaming-only version of ESPN that Iger is now pushing forward, with reports suggesting that Disney is looking for partners to take a minority stake in the network. Chapek is going in. That's not the only move Iger has made that contradicts his previous stances. While Iger reportedly wanted Disney Plus to be the cheapest streaming service on offer, he's following in Chapek's footsteps by cranking up the price yet again. Whether Iger wants to admit it, he may now see reason in some of the business decisions made by Chapek.
I feel like you wrote this article.
I can't write that well. Are you kidding me? So good. But this is the feeling that I've gotten. I've said on the show before, too. I guarantee you Iger is now going, oh, yeah, I guess things are just different overall now.
Yeah, but he still won.
Did he win or is he losing? Because what is the stock is like sub 80 right now.
It got back up to 80 by the end of the day, but it dumped. Yeah.
The stock, which again was a big reason why people wanted to replace Chapek, it's worse than it's been in 10 years.
But is it just Disney stock that's down, or is the whole stock market down? That's also
I think Disney stock is down harder than most other stocks.
Yeah, it's affecting the market, but other big things like Tesla aren't tanking right now also.
Yeah,
I love it. Taryn doesn't like me to be happy. Taryn hates that I'm happy about
I
this.
don't hate that you're happy. I just
look at her
think,
face.
I think
Look at her
it's-
face.
Oh my God.
Look at her. She's so upset.
You just are so, I don't know. Your opinions are just so strong on this topic.
Yeah. I think it's hilarious. I
Is
think
it
it's
because
very
he's so
funny.
delighted?
Yeah,
Is that what's
I
getting him?
guess.
I think it's very funny to me. I don't know, the whole thing. I love when rich people fight. I love when people who are sort of elevated based on their decisions are then sort of called out for who they really are or what they really are. And I love it when people who get dumped on sort of gain credibility after the fact. Because everyone, in my opinion, everyone dumped on Chapek way too soon, way too easily, and didn't give him time to do his thing. And it clearly now with the reporting coming out that Iger was sort of in the background from day one, needling at everybody else, saying, oh, this guy sucks and this guy can't do anything or whatever. That's got to, you're not setting your successor up for success.
Oh no, I definitely don't think he did.
And so I
that.
think Iger really undermined a lot of what Chapek did, even more than I had realized. There was a lot of infighting, and it sounds like there was a lot of Iger talking to the board behind Chapek's back, and Chapek finding out about it, and you can't trust your board at that point.
Yeah.
So it just creates a rift. So it sort of seems like Iger sabotaged Chapek from the outside.
I agree.
And I think that's perfect. I think it's perfect because all the Bob Iger stands, need that. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Thanks everybody for making it this long, the 2-hour mark of our show tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you very much to Aaron Goldberg. You can go to aaronhgoldberg.com right now and find out where you can buy his 5 books on the Disney company and the Disney brothers, and this one specifically Buying Disney's World. I have not finished it yet. I am slightly embarrassed to say that. I'm about 50 pages out. But man, it's such a good read. If you're not a reader, but you want to know like Disney history, stuff that people don't really know or talk about, this is the book for you, man, because it drags you through it. It pulls you through the story. And before you know it, you're on page 50. You're like, whoa. It's an easy read, very smooth, and super interesting. Loved it. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. Go to our Patreon and do all the things. And I don't know, you've heard me talk about it. Buy some shirts. Or not. I don't know. Until next time, we'll see you in the parks.